Hey. Well, we all set?
Oh, yeah, you're recording.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming, honestly. Appreciate that. First time speaking at this conference, but I've heard a lot of really good things about it. So how is the conference treating you all so far? Sweet. Okay. I will say this. I came in from Florida for the weather. And man, let me tell you, I'm freezing up here right now. Like, I'm well insulated, and I'm still freezing pretty good right now. So this is pretty interesting for me. But I did have some practice. I just came out of Pennsylvania, and last week I went to Chicago, which was hell. So thank you for at least not being that bad. I'm going to warn you right now, this talk is very blue in nature. I am a blue side guy for the most part. In other words, defensive. Okay? And the reason I came up with this talk is I've been doing this for a while now. I've been in IT and security. I'll throw that up there in a minute. But I've been doing this for a long time now. And what I found is over the years, we have really started moving towards technical solutions for things and blinky boxes, which I totally understand. I love it. I honestly, in a place that I used to work, we had this beautiful switch that I would go in and turn off the lights in the server room just to watch the lights blink. I kid you not. It's absolutely beautiful to watch that, right? But we've been transfixed by that. In many cases, we're pulled into that, and now we're just used to throwing up more technology. The problem is some of the foundational things in organizations are not getting done. And part of that is the technology pieces are out there. Part of that is we're seeing a lot of growth in organizations, and so somebody starts off very small, and it's okay to have a small network, a flat network, but within about 2 or 3 years, you're so busy running around trying to do this other stuff, now you've got a pretty decent sized network, and it's still dead flat. That's one of the things we'll talk about here. That means everything can talk to everything else. That's a problem, and it's getting away from us, but we keep putting technology in place to try to fix these problems that foundationally are still an issue out there. And so that's what I'm covering today, is a lot of the foundational things that are getting missed in organizations that I've seen throughout my career. So that being said, the good-looking guy on the screen, that's me. So Eric Kron is my name. I work with KnowBe4, again, out of Florida. My background, first of all, do we have any CISSPs in here? Okay, we got a couple. There was an email came out a few years ago, said your annual minimum CPEs are going to go to 40 per year. My name was at the bottom of that. Be gentle. Okay. great. So we're going to have a lot of time with my mouth moving and no sound. So principle of least privilege is very, very similar to the same, only it's taking the rights that people have and limiting what they can get to. So how many of you in your organizations have like a shared drive, like an S drive or something like that, right? Where everyone dumps files, okay? Lots of people do that. Well, again, not to pick on receptionists, but does your receptionist have access to write to the accounting drive? Possibly. Do you know what people have the rights to write to? So going back to ransomware, if ransomware hits, it usually launches in the context of the user that launched it. If they cannot write to the file, they cannot encrypt the file. That makes a big difference right there. But far too often, we add users. We're just like, okay, cool, cool, cool. Now, when I was with the Army, one of my projects was to help with role-based access control. It's basically hell in a project, okay? You're trying to figure out what all these people's roles are. But here's the problem we had there. People would move from department to department, okay? And what happens when this happens? And this happens in the real world too. People go from one role to another or one department to another. You add their permissions to that, but very rarely do you know what the hell to take away. And so these people are running around. How many of you have ever had an account you're like, I can still get into that, right? Oh, I have. That perpetuates. You lose track of it. You lose control over it. And now you have somebody who gets hit by something, or they get phished, somebody goes in, and now they have access to their box. Now they have those permissions to start moving around on the network. And that's really, really dangerous stuff. Pretty much all the tools are already there. We don't have to buy more stuff to put this stuff in place. It's a matter of focusing on setting it up that way. And in all these things that I'm talking about here, I'm not suggesting that you go out and you start ripping wires out of the switch and go, okay, we're going to segment today, or we're going to fix this today, all right? These are things that you can start to roll out as you continue to roll things out in the future. Start having a plan for the new things are going in this area here, and then you start moving things in. Take your time and do this. I'm not saying that you want to do it, by Wednesday, but we've got to have this thoughts, and we've got to be considering this. We have to have more of these talks with people about dealing with the fundamentals. That's what this is about, right? 74% of IT decision makers surveyed whose organizations have been breached in the past say it involved privileged access credential abuse. That's brutal. What are you doing to protect those accounts? Who has access to them? If they're key accounts, do you have multi-factor authentication on them? Now, MFA can be bypassed. My colleague, Roger Grimes, he loves to, because I'm a big MFA junkie, and he loves to poke ways at me. He's like, I think I have 31 ways to bypass MFA now. And I'm like, yeah, and a lot of them are human-based, right? You get the text message, and, you have to put that in. Well, they have attacks where they pretend to be a bank, and they text and say, hey, we're beta testing, or we're testing a new security system. We want to make sure this works. They already have your username and password. So what do? They put it in and say, okay, now you should have gotten a text from the new system. Please help us out by telling us what the number is that we just sent you. People go, oh, hey, cool, I'm helping out. And they give them the number, and bam, we're right in through the MFA. That's a human attack, but it's bypassing MFA, right? But it's better than nothing. So if your organization has social media accounts, have you ever thought about protecting those? What those can do? Anyone here remember when the Associated Press Twitter account got breached a number of years back? And they turned around and they said, oh, there was explosions in the White House, not sure what's going on with the president. I have a slide for some MFA talks I do. You can see when that tweet came out and the stock market price went ding right at that moment. Okay, in Tampa, the mayor of Tampa had his Twitter account hacked. In other words, somebody got the credentials and posted all kinds of just crazy crap overnight one day. Now, it was so far over the top that everyone's like, okay, we see what happened. But imagine in your organization if somebody does that sort of thing. Your reputation is built a lot on those sorts of things, and it can come back and bite you pretty hard. So protect those accounts too. Know who has access to those so you don't just keep adding people to having access to those. course, you probably just share one account with the same email anyways, right? Write it down, put it under the keyboard, it's all good. We all do that, right? What's that? Like Hawaii did, right? Do y'all remember that when Hawaii had that missile scare that happened? And then they come in and they do the news segment on it, and the guy's sitting there, and the password for the system was on a Post-it note on the monitor. Seriously? Right? It doesn't matter if you have a 42-character password with no repeating digits, and I don't know how that's possible, but I'm sure it is. It doesn't matter if you're going to put it on a Post-it note and stick it on the damn monitor, right? These things happen. But again, when it comes to this sort of things, protect your accounts, protect what's going on with these sorts of things, and make sure that you know who has permissions to what. It does require auditing. It requires going in and looking at this. Like I said, I rolled out role-based access for my Army organization. It was about 300-something people that were all IT people. We all bounced around all over the place. You wouldn't believe some of the permissions I turned up in some of this stuff. We need to take some time and do that. We already have the tools. We just need to do the time. I think you guys kind of understand my feeling on this one already. Okay. I love RDP. I use RDP all the time. But I VPN first. RDP is just, the problem isn't necessarily with RDP itself, but most of the implementations of RDP are sloppy. Okay? Sometimes people will move it from port 3389 to 3390, and they're like, yes, no one's ever going to find that. That doesn't work, folks, if you didn't know, gathered on the response. The other thing that happens, though, is you put something out there that's internet-facing, and a lot of times they don't do good lockout policies. So what do? You just sit there and, hey, it's on the internet. I'll throw some credentials at it every, 4 or 5 minutes, see what happens. Just run a script that does that until he goes, hey, you're in, right? If we're not watching for that, if we're not monitoring heavily on accounts that are internet-facing, that's a problem. But RDP is just, once you're in that machine, you're in that machine, and then the game's pretty much over at that point. My recommendation is, and what I've seen work better is, use a VPN first. VPN into something. VPN into a safe network. Probably not directly into the corporate network. I'm just not a fan of that. And use a jump box, an RDP session in there that you can get to that has your tools on it. I'm a big, let's not go straight to your actual real box from the internet sort of guy. But if you're going to do it, monitor the hell out of it. Make sure you understand what's going on. Make sure you have some DLP in place to watch for data leaving your network through that. If your user all of a sudden starts pulling 50 megs a second out for sustained periods of like 3 days, you should probably be spotting that. But a lot of people aren't looking for that. So data gets exfiltrated out of some of these areas. But again, look for these things. Make sure that you're monitoring these if you have them. But the easiest way to do it is just remove it. SamSam is a group that's been doing ransomware. They're fantastic at just blowing through this sort of thing. They find unsecure RDP, and they're in it in no time. So finally, everyone's favorite, keep up with patches. We all love patching, right? Who here has a primary or a significant duty that involves patching? Show of hands. Oh, you poor bastards, man. Well, the thing about patching is, man, it is tough. It is absolutely tough. No doubt about it. Where I see us trip up on patching sometimes is we're patching the wrong things. Okay? And where this falls into play is I see a lot of people breaking their necks to patch a bunch of things that don't have an active exploit with them yet. And in the meantime, they're ignoring other things that could be a bigger deal. Now, you want to keep that on the list, but a lot of times people do the wrong things. I also, coming out of medical, this is a phenomenon that I saw a lot in medical, is you have a device say, an MRI machine that's fantastic. It does great imaging. The doctors are familiar with it. They're used to looking at it. They can spot cancer in a fly. You know, I mean, it's so precise. They can see everything they need, and it's running on Windows Vista. Okay, so what do you do? All right, the manufacturer possibly has been acquired 4 or 5 times by now in the last year, because that's how medical stuff works. They're never going to be a patch for this machine. So what do? You put it in its own little area and you ignore it from patching. Well, all of your other patch stuff is running around this machine. In the meantime, some of these patches don't require Microsoft bundled things. It's fixing certain things, maybe turning off a certain version of, of SMB or something like that, right? You still need to keep that on your list of things to look at. So when these vulnerabilities do roll out, you need to understand, hey, I need to fix this. Or maybe you turn off file sharing on that thing a little bit as these come out. But a lot of times people will just patch and think that they're good, but that's not the end of it, right? Or they spend all of their effort patching some new vulnerability that has a cool-ass logo. Sorry. Has a very cool logo. And such, and that's not their threat, right? So they're working on their Windows boxes when their Linux machines are over here. They run a shop that has 99% Linux machines, but they're going to spend all their time trying to patch the one Windows box. Is that really your threat? So patching is not easy, but it is something we have to do. And I will say this, we got a pretty good way of running through this, coordinating with other people in the Army. In the beginning, when we did patching, we did a lot of this self-inflicted wound thing. So like, okay, cool, we're going to patch the domain controllers tonight. And in the meantime, the network team is going to down a switch as they do their patching. And so halfway through your patch, it loses connections and all hell breaks loose, right? We got really good at doing that to ourselves until we started coordinating with each other on that. And honestly, it actually got pretty easy once we stopped stepping in our own stuff. So you can do it. Think about it, though, and we got to put some effort into doing that. So in summary, usually a lot of ways to improve security without adding additional technology. It's always fun to have those extra things, but there's a lot of stuff that we probably left behind that we haven't done already. Some of these require improved documentation, overhauling some processes. That is fun. If you guys aren't all excited about the idea of new policies and processes, man, yeah, I know it's not easy. But working on a strong security culture will help your organization adapt to this stuff as well. You know, like I said, with the patching, working with other people, that made a huge difference. So that being said, I'm about out of time. Here's my info. This is the Twitter I use most of the time. Open for any questions you have. Always open to comment anything else. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Oh.
So when you were talking about patching, focusing the patching on items that have active exploits, we have this culture where we're at right now that all that matters is how many patches are not patched and how many were patched.
Right. Right. It's all numbers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is, above us, like our VP level, and that's where that's coming from. How do you change that culture to because there's so many, 2,500 systems.
Yeah.
You're never going to patch 10,000.
So, and I'm not just trying to plug a colleague of mine. I work with a guy named Roger Grimes, and Roger is a very, very smart guy. He wrote a book called Data-Driven Defense. And so what you do is for Christmas, you drop that on your executive, on your boss's desk or whatever with a little bow on it. It actually focuses a lot on where are my real problems here? What do I need to be focusing on? And it lays it out in a way that is very helpful with that, because when you're patching for compliance, just like anything else you're doing for compliance, it's different than patching for security. And so if you're just going, this many came out, this many CVEs came out, this many patches came out, we need to get this many out, that is not an effective way of actually working with your risk. And so I highly recommend his book. It's not a very long read, but it's really eye-opening in the simplicity. You'll read it and be like, well, yeah, duh. but he puts it out in such a way that it's good for leadership to be able to understand those principles then and be able to focus on the things that are not compliance. So, it's called Data-Driven Defense. So, yeah, it's just a nice way to look at that. So, all right. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.